working like a fat man, friend.
This is my massive balls, Uhtred.
And I know you do not speak from envy.
Welcome everybody to the Season 4 Last Kingdom review. Now many of you and myself have probably already watched the entire season, but I thought it would be really fun to go back to the very beginning, episode by episode, and really examine what we saw in those episodes, how the pacing went, my favourite moments in them, and explore what that episode meant in terms of the entire story that we got over Season 4. However, if you are watching these reviews at the same pace you watch the show, I will try to avoid specific spoilers for future episodes and more comment on general trends of characters and plot lines, so hopefully you can still watch these if that's what you're planning on doing. The first shot of the entire season is these blood-soaked waves washing ashore during the battle outside of Bethember. Straight away we know this season is going to involve Northumbria, the uncle that we haven't seen for a while, and Uhtred's ongoing goal of reclaiming his home. The battle itself is actually a really interesting sequence that we get to see a lot from. This fight in particular is extremely gritty and down to earth. Everyone is covered in sand and mud. Much like many other fights we've seen in the series, it feels very much like people just hacking each other with very sharp objects and not some glorified, honourable duel of fates. This is reinforced again very well with the way that Athelred just commands his men. He's constantly throwing out barbs and jests saying slaughter them all, swearing at them, yelling at them. He's very crass and rude the entire time. It reminds us quite quickly that he's not a very nice fellow, he's not that great of a leader, and just why it'd be great for Uhtred to kill him and take over Bethember. So with this first scene alone, we get a lot of new information. We establish the current situation in Bethember with the threat of the Scots, we get a nice refresher of the character of the uncle, and they build up on that theme we see across Season 4 around the devastating cost of war. After quite a turbulent Season 3 and the big battle we saw at the end of that, both Wessex and Mercia have returned to a sense of peace and normalcy. Back at Cookham we see the relationship between Uhtred and Athelred has moved up a couple bases. Over at Winchester we can see that Wessex is trying to move past the death of Alfred. We see them having to adjust to King Edward's reign, and more importantly the ambition of his father-in-law and the soon-to-be new queen. To many characters like Beocca and Alswyd and Athelred, these changes come as quite jarring, much like seeing your child at home or bedroom after you've been away to like college for a while. You know that things have to move on and adapt, but you kind of feel a little bit of resentment for seeing the things you loved and understood changing around you so rapidly. It's at this point that the story starts to pick up a bit, and we see a couple of the gears of the plot spinning and warming up for something quite big heading the way of our major characters. To begin with, we see the Danish plan to invade Wessex and Mercia taking shape. The ever-calculating and scheming Heston has found a weak link in Athelred's court. This is the first time we get to see Merdwulf, a very important character over this season. A lot of Last Kingdom's plot has been pushed by specific, ambitious individuals willing to betray or do anything to achieve their ends. And that very much was Adewulf in the previous season, but now they've got this new character they've kind of trotted out to replace him. From the very first dialogue we get between him and Heston, we see a lot about what's happening in Mercia and the place that this character has. When he introduces himself as the commander of the Mercian Guard, we see Heston quite quickly say his latest new commander, which is the writer's sly way of indicating to us that there's been quite a few commanders over quite a short period of time, which reminds us how volatile Athelred, the king of Mercia, is and how quickly he turns on the subordinates around him. So this indicates to us that even though Merdwulf looks quite confident and in a good position, he actually has quite a risky role and is on thin ice, making him that much more desperate to try and make sure he can leave a good impression and not get thrown away like the many predecessors he probably had. And just in case we didn't pick up on that in the first place, Heston tells us about his family's disgrace, confirming our suspicions about where he is in the Mercian court. So it seems that Heston's picked the perfect person to implement their plan. So while the Danes are heading south, trying to capture Mercia and draw out Edward, it seems that Uhtred has his eyes set further north. So Finan, Oswell and the other members of Uhtred's kind of ragtag team return with news from Bethember. After Uhtred discovers the circumstances in Bethember and the plight that they face, he immediately realizes that this is the best time for him to act if he ever wants to reclaim his home. Knowing this could be the most significant mission of his life, he wants to gather around all the most important people to him for this final journey. I quite enjoyed the heartwarming scene we got between Hild and Beocca and him. Even if Beocca was still in his own headspace and trying to escape through his work and writings, we saw Hild was in a good place and where she wanted to be. They also use this scene as a way to give Uhtred and the audience some good information about the state of affairs. We learn that Aelfhelm has quite a lot of influence over Edward as his father-in-law, and that many of the more senior members of the court really feel Alfred's absence. And it really doesn't take that much longer for Uhtred to feel this himself when he tries to convince Edward to give him troops to take Bethemburg. For once, it seems that Uhtred comes with a plan that he's thought out very well, that has mutual benefit for both sides, so he walks in pretty confident, almost too confident that he'll be able to convince Edward to give him the troops he needs. The only problem is he overestimates how much of a priority Uhtred's ideas and ambitions are to Edward, and underestimates just how influential Aethelhelm has become to the decisions that Edward makes. Alfred recognized the biggest struggles Edward had was making decisions, being decisive, and trusting his own judgment. And he made some development in that area in the previous season, but he is still very much a young king. So his father-in-law has very much taken that vacuum that existed in Edward's life and wormed himself in. Now, I also enjoyed Praelig's role in this scene. He was quite witty, he was backing Uhtred the whole way through. He very much seemed the last remaining voice of reason around Edward. And we could already see how the show was planning to make Praelig a significantly bigger character in Season 4, which has to be one of the best decisions they've made over this season, as almost every scene Praelig was in was a highlight for me. This was even more directly shown to us in that scene between Beocca and him, where Beocca basically says, it's time for you to step up. With your position, there's going to be some really huge challenges where you have to choose between the kingdom and your conscience. It very much was Beocca passing the baton over to Praelig and saying, good luck, because this boy is out of here. Which I'm sure reassured Praelig a lot, because we all know that senior members of the court giving you cryptic warnings and then dipping out is a great sign for the future. So it seems that yet again, Uhtred's been screwed over by Wessex and its king, and left to fend for himself. However, Uhtred's not going to give up on this dream and this moment without a fight. So when he finds out about the heart of Oswald, the priest going there, a plan starts churning in his head. With a little bit of help from Athelred, that is. So he does the only reasonable thing you could do, which is kidnap your son from his monastery, drag him across the country with you on a dangerous adventure to reclaim your homeland. It's just common sense, basically. Another big part of this episode was the estrangement of Alswyd from her son, and her loss of position in the court. Perhaps my favourite piece of dialogue in the entire episode was between her and Beocca when he overhears her conversation with Hilm. We finally get to see a bit more of this blunt, to the point, and bitter Beocca who's willing to throw down fire when he gets shot at. He throws much of the blame of what's happening in the court at Alswyd's feet because it really is hers, and when she tries to get back at him, he just hits her with the best line.
It is unwise to remain somewhere you are not wanted.
And yet you choose to stay here too. Perhaps we're not.
So even without Edward's army, Uhtred is ready and prepared to head north for Bethemburg. He's got his son, his men, his will, and even Beocca shows up after he's pushed out of the court. He's ready to take on his past, he's ready to take down his uncle, and the last shot of the episode is him sailing away with the winds of destiny. When the plot of Last Kingdom gets so grandeur, when the politics of the kingdoms is so vast, armies are fighting each other, and things are moving at such a fast pace, you kind of get sucked out of the human experience of living in this kingdom. But for a moment, this episode brings us back down to earth. We get to see a bit more of the day-to-day of people's lives when things aren't crazy and chaotic. We get to catch up with all the characters, what they've been doing, and what they're looking forward to for the future. It starts a bit slow, but by the end we have a very well established plot with good movement going forward for the rest of the season. It hit every note we wanted to see for an episode 1 and really sets up the season extremely well. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on episode 1, the new characters we were introduced to, the new places, the direction the show was going in from this point. Having a discussion with you guys about these shows is the main reason I make these videos, so please tell me your thoughts below. And if you did enjoy the video, you could smash that like button as well. That always makes me feel very good. And if you have not subscribed yet to the channel, we will be putting more Last Kingdom content out, so don't miss out and subscribe. Thanks for watching!